doing this ceremony, no ceremony is ever really a demonstration. It's always real. We always call in the presence of God or Spirit, and that makes it real. So this ceremony is in remembrance of my mama, who, while she's been gone for a number of years, still is part of my life. I know she is content that what I do in this ceremony is for her and for myself. I call on that power which created the worlds and which holds them in its hands and in its heart, to lend its presence to the ceremony and to make this space a sacred space. And so it is. Going to do the readings here. These are two readings that I grew up on in some ways, that they were my mother's favorites and also mine. The first is from the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Mama was a poet. The moving finger writes, and having writ, moves on. Nor all thy piety nor wit shall lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all thy tears wash out a word of it. And this from Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. And he said to himself, shall the day of parting be the day of gathering? And shall it be said that my eve was in truth my dawn? And what shall I give unto him who hath left his plough in mid-furrow, or to him who has stopped the wheel of his winepress? Shall my heart become tree heavy laden with fruit that I may gather and give unto them? And shall my desires flow like a fountain that I may fill their cups? Am I a harp that the hand of the mighty may touch me, or a flute that its breath may pass through me? A seeker of silence am I, and what treasure have I found in silences that I may dispense with confidence? If this is my day of harvest, in what fields have I sowed the seed, and in what unremembered seasons? If this indeed be the hour in which I lift up my lantern, it is not my flame that shall burn therein. Empty and dark shall I raise my lantern, and the guardian of the night shall fill it with oil, and he shall light it also. Going to invest this candle. I light this candle as a symbol of Joey Winter's pain, in remembrance of her life and her death and the richness of her being. So, I have a couple of memories of Mom that I want to share. One is because I still miss her sometimes, most dreadfully. The other is because it was a beginning for both of us. So one day when I was still at the ranch and we were there, and I had gone to speak to Mom about something that needed to be changed, and we weren't getting anywhere at all. Every time she'd say to me, I don't want you to feel bad, I'd say, oh, I don't feel bad. Or I don't want you to feel guilty, I'd say, no, I don't feel guilty. And she got more and more angry. More and more she was yelling at me, more and more frustrated, because somehow or another I was not reacting or behaving in the way that she had expected me to behave, and frankly in the way I had always behaved before. So I was kind of surprised at how my responses were as well as what her reactions were. And finally, absolutely frustrated beyond bearing, she stood up and did this action, just like on the theater, right? Never darken my doorway again. And she actually said those words, which was at the top of her voice. I said to her, I can see you're really angry about something. And so I'll come back at another time when you're feeling better, and maybe we can have this conversation again. And I went home and told my friend, my therapist, Marianne, what had happened. And that night she called me, and it seemed that Mom was having heart palpitations, and she was sobbing, and she was ill, and she was really distressed. And Wally asked me if I wouldn't please, Wally talked to Marianne, and Marianne called and said, is there any way that you can write a letter of apology without actually saying you're sorry? and, and I was still in this really interesting space. And I said, of course I can do that. And I wrote to my mom and I said to her, I am really sorry that you are so upset. And I'm not too sure, what has caused the problems. I want you to remember or to understand that I'm in a process now of trying to rediscover a relationship with you, which is not limited to being a daughter, your daughter. And I'm trying to figure out how to be an adult with not only you, but other adults. And obviously, I'm still not very graceful at doing this. And it has somehow distressed you. And I am very sorry that you're distressed. And signed it with love and sent it off. Gave it to Mary, and Marianne gave it to my mother. And Mother, of course, was able to read into that. I was sorry that I had been bad, right? That I'd hurt her feelings, that I had done whatever it was she needed for me to be sorry about. And still not having said I was sorry for having caused her problems, right? That was the first day that I realized I was absolutely free of dependency upon my mother in our mother-daughter relationship, and of the codependence that had been so unhealthy between the two of us. And it was also a wonderful day in spite of how it began, because it was the day that she and I began to create a relationship between peers and between friends and between adults. And I was able to spend the rest of our lives together with a friend that I truly loved and cared about, who I respected and who understood me and who respected me as an adult and as a person in my own right. So this was actually a wonderful day in spite of what it began. And somehow I'll still never forget how funny it was to watch her as she, and how stunned I felt as she made this incredibly theatrical gesture at that particular time. The other thing that I remember is she and I drove a lot. We took long drives. We drove from East San Diego County up to Monterey, where we had relatives living, and then we moved up here and we drove down that same road to where we had relatives living, so that we often had long drives, 10, 12 hours, sometimes longer, and we enjoyed that. I missed driving with my mom. Those were times when we could talk about spiritual things, talk about family stories. We could talk about whatever it is that came to mind, about healing, about ministering. We could also be simply quiet together and comfortable as we moved through the landscape and watch the changing seasons and watch where we were going and what was happening and make comments or not make comments. I miss her. I miss her on these long drives. I miss her comforting and her companionship and her loving presence. I miss her in many, many ways, but I think especially I miss her when I take long drives. I guess it's time to say goodbye again. I love you, Mama, and I miss you. I thank you for having been such a blessing in my life, for having enriched my life in so many ways. With all my love, I release you into the heart of eternal love until we meet again. Farewell. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Leave us not in temptation, but deliver us from all evils. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. And thus we close our ceremony. So I will let this candle burn itself out on this altar, and I will spend some quiet time for myself and for the comfort and the peace that I am feeling within. And I hope for you all the same in your ceremonies as well. Farewell.